All right, lads and lasses, and g'day, mates. Welcome to the weekly news update for Newcastle United fans from your pals all the way over here in Australia. It is, of course, the Toon podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the whirlwind news that dropped just in the last 24 hours regarding Sandro Tonali, or Toonali, as I like to call him. We will also touch on the latest that we know of, at least for Nicola Barella. We'll mention Madison because everyone seems to have to mention Madison when we talk about transfers at Newcastle. And then we'll finish off with a bit of news about Saudis hoovering up all of Chelsea's outcasts. Before we get into that, I'm joined by Craigie. Now, Craigie, it's been a bit of a crazy 24 hours, I suppose, in the Newcastle Twitter sphere, particularly. Before we get into that, I just thought, first of all, how are you doing? I just thought I might give you 30 seconds to have a little rant about your mates at Castle.
Oh, where do you want me to begin? Apart from those twats who don't know how to make a kit, who don't know how to dispatch a kit, who don't know how to communicate with people that have bought a kit, and probably won't be supplying us with a kit next season. They're a bunch of useless pricks, and I cannot wait until we bin them and kick them into the sea. I have had multiple emails sent to them. I've had 2 back. One statement to be delivered or dispatched in 2 days, then another in 5 to 7 days. Now I haven't heard anything after that's been 10 days. So they can go and get fucked, they can get in the sea and bring back Adidas as far as I'm concerned. I'm not the only person that's been the same that's been affected by the whole batshit craziness of it.
That's your 30 seconds, mate. We'll be here all day if I let you rant on about that. On the fence, as always, Craigie. Just before we get started, if you do like what we do, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube and help spread the word of the Toon podcast. All right, let's get into the whirlwind that has been going on in the last 24 hours regarding this fella here, Craig, Sandro Tonali. Of AC Milan. It's been widely reported that we have bid around 50 or 60 million. I'm not sure whether that's pounds or euros. It seems to change whenever you read a different tweet or a different bit of content on this. For the AC Milan midfielder, the new owners of the Rossoneri recently sacked Paolo Maldini, the Milan club legend, of course, and even he was also the director of Milan at the time. And this has been suggested as a reason why this deal could happen. And that's because Maldini was instrumental in bringing Tenali to Milan from Brescia in 2020. Now, Tenali is a lifelong Milan supporter, which has shades of the Barella story that we'll get onto soon. And he recently signed a new deal at Milan, which keeps him there, allegedly, at least, until June 2027. Now, this deal, this connection with Newcastle has been reported by The Athletic, which is usually a good source for information for Newcastle, although it's worth saying it was not reported, at least that I've seen, by George or Chris. And Chris Hope, as always, shortly after the news started doing the rounds, he claimed that no offer had actually been made, and this was yesterday. And then we hear today that the Chronicle are saying that contact had been made between intermediaries of the player and Newcastle, but nothing concrete so far as an offer had been made. Then later in the day, we hear that from Sky's Peter Grave that, yes, Newcastle are trying to make a deal happen, but that no mention of an actual bid had been made. Then we hear again later today on Twitter that the fee Milan want is around the 80 million euros mark, and that Newcastle's first bid has indeed been rejected, which is interesting because that would suggest Newcastle did indeed bid in the first place. And just now, as we were about to go on there, we saw a tweet from Sport Italia saying that Tenali's entourage is in fact in London right now and will be meeting Newcastle's representatives. How accurate that is, we'll have to wait and see. So it's all very exciting. It's all kicking off right now about Sandro Tonali. Milan paid around 20 million euros to sign him initially. And with all this information flying around and suggestions of 80 million euros, a lot of this information is contradictory right now, and it largely depends on who you want to believe. But Craig, it's one of those stories where there's just too much smoke for it to be one of those kind of bullshit rumors that you see coming out every time there's a transfer window, doesn't it? What do you make of all the rumors of stuff that we've just been hearing, especially the latest stuff about his entourage? And if you could, please just give us an idea about the player himself and what this guy could bring to Newcastle.
Yeah, well, it's been quite quiet on Twitter, hasn't it, since his news broke. But he's a cracking player, very similar to the mold of Bruno in terms of like a box-to-box midfielder, but probably would prefer to play a bit deeper than Bruno, so more of a defensive line midfielder, which would allow Bruno to push forward, which is something we've all said over the past few days, weeks, and months of the season just gone. But Tonali himself, he is just 23 years old. He only just turned 23 in May gone. Made 130 appearances for Milan, 7 goals, 13 assists, has Champions League experience, has Europa League experience as well. So ideally the type of player that we will be looking for, and it fills that void of the much wanted midfielder since John Joe left in January.
Yeah, that was a surprise, wasn't it, when John Joe was shifted on down to Forest in a move that ultimately didn't work out for either Forest or Shelby by the seams of things. I think they're already trying to get rid of him. But that was it when that move happened. I think even Eddie Howe was a little bit kind of not unhappy, not dejected, nothing like that. But I think he did say, he would prefer to have kept the player, but he understood why the club had decided to move him on. It does, as you say, leave that hole for someone to come in a more defensive position, perhaps, and move, as you said, Bruno further up forward, and maybe we can benefit from some of his attacking play. The guy is what, 23-year-old, is he?
23. I just turned 23, May gone.
And what can you tell us, if anything at all, about his form from last season? Do you have any figures about any goals, any assists, anything of that nature?
I do, yes. So he played the majority of games in Serie A last season. He played 34 games, scored 2, assisted 7. He does like the odd yellow card every now and again, so he picked up 7 last season, which doesn't quite beat Big Joe's yellow card tally, but it's certainly a good run. But he's quite consistent as well, considering he's quite young. Again, the season before, he played 36 games, 5 goals, 3 assists. He picked up 9 yellow cards in that one. But yeah, he's relatively injury-free. He doesn't start the majority of games, but that's probably more down to squad rotation than injuries or little niggles or anything. So he's got the pace, he's got the energy, he can carry the ball for a full 90 minutes if you want him to. And yeah, he looks the type of player that has got Eddie Howe written all over him.
Well, just on that point, is he a tall lad? Because it seems like we only kind of go for people who are at least 6'17".
He's not going to be eye to eye with Dan Burn, that's for sure. But I mean, to give him, he's 1.81 m, so I'm not sure what that translates to in pound sterling or anything like that. But what's that going to be? What, 5'10", something like it?
Nah, it's more like 170 something. So he's probably around about the 6-footish mark, I would say, at a wild guess. Which is kind of the going rate for Newcastle players. The yellow card thing, you kind of want that from a defensive midfielder, though. It shows that he's getting stuck in and breaking up play as much as anything, doesn't it? As long as he doesn't do those ridiculous Lascelles-esque kind of tackles where he just kind of hacks someone down on the edge of the box or something and gives away a ridiculous free kick in a glorious position for the team to score from. That as long as he's not that kind of midfield. If he's like a Tiote type who was really getting stuck in, but also had legs on him and a hell of an engine, then I think it could be absolutely brilliant. I'm just hearing from Bobby here in the chat that a lot of the Italian media are now reporting that the negotiations are even in the final stages. So this is, I mean, obviously Newcastle don't do anything just on the spur of things. This would have been in the works for a long, long time, and it's coming to a head almost. And what we're hearing is that it sounds like the agents, the reporters and all the other various connected people are hearing things possibly behind the actual reality of where negotiations are. Now, we'll have to wait and see what happens here, but it's looking like this could be a go at this one. And what a signing that would be, wouldn't it?
It would be would we consider Marquis signing? I mean, he's not a fully fledged international yet. He hasn't made his debut for the Italian first team. He is capped at under 21 level. However, he's made a few appearances for them, 12 appearances, no goals. Just touching on his Champions League, he played 12 games, started all 11, and played 98% of game time, which is pretty impressive for a 23-year-old.
An excellent experience to bring to a team that will be in the Champions League next season, of course, for the first time in 20 years. All right, well, let's keep an eye on Twitter. Everyone keep an eye on Twitter, because this thing is going to get announced and you'll not even realize it's been done. And then suddenly it'll be there, it'll be done. And we can all celebrate a signing for Newcastle. Hopefully a first team signing, even though he is 23. Moving on. Let's see what we got next. Nicola Barella. Now, this was the original flurry of excitement that we got through Twitter and the other various channels, and that was only feels like a lifetime ago now. But what was that like? Was that even this? Was that last week? Was it this week? I can't even tell. But it feels like a lifetime ago, but it wasn't.
It has to be in the last 10 days or so. Got to be. But I at least everything running in the background. Nothing's been leaked into the media or anything over the last few days. But things seems to have cooled with that. But that could be a case of no news is good news. We like to do our all of our stuff behind closed doors. As we've seen since we had the takeover. So who knows, things could be progressing in the background of that. But if deals are progressing better for Tenali than they are for Barella, maybe he's their preferred option. Who knows? Well, time will tell.
Well, so it does seem incredibly unlike at this stage that Barella will be signing for the Newcastle. It's worth mentioning that the Italian hooligans, ultras in quotes, basically hooligans, they basically warned him off the idea of leaving from Inter. He's obviously a born and bred Inter fan, is Barella. And yeah, the ultras said, hey, don't think about it, sunshine. You're one of us and you always will be. It actually remains, given that I did have a note here saying it remains to be seen if the AC Milan ultras might end up doing the same sort of thing for Tenali. But if what Bobby says in the chat is correct and it's in the final stages, then I guess not. I mean, it might have even caught them out by surprise, the way this has all kind of developed over the last 24 hours. But with that talk of Benali, it's probably a good sign that Barella is not our primary target anymore, if he ever was. What else have you heard, Craig, about Barella? I think something from Peter Graves, wasn't it? And also a little bit of good old-fashioned playing spotting, I think.
Yeah, well, Barella, he's definitely on the wanted list, but I wouldn't say he's first or second choice. From what Pete Graves mentioned in a tweet, those first two key players are Tenali and James Madison, who we know is a long-term target for the club. So Barella may just be sat behind one of those as like a first reserve almost. And there was a plane from yesterday that took off from Milan, stopped off in Paris, and landed in Newcastle, which, if everything goes accordingly and that is the case, then maybe there's something in it. Who knows? But again, these plane spotters can get a little bit excited as soon as a plane from somewhere a bit more exotic lands on Tyneside, and people get a little bit excited putting two together and get 404. It's going to be exciting times. I don't mind the plane spotting. I know Bobby loves it. What's
hilarious.
Your thoughts on the plane spotting, Lee?
It's hilarious, isn't it? It's one of the best things about Newcastle Twitter, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The froth that everyone gets into when they see some bloody Cessna or whatever flying over the channel. It's like, oh my God, it's happening. You know, the interesting thing about that one is if it landed in Newcastle and then we hear that the entourage is in London for negotiations, you think they would have just flown to London, wouldn't you?
You would, yeah.
It's probably just somebody from Milan or Paris going to Blue Bamboo. You know, it'll be something like that. And then they'll just be heading back home sooner rather than later. We also hear from our sources that there's that this move for Toonali has been given a thumbs up from our source. I can't say any more on that, but that is a huge indication that this is actually happening,
boys. It's happening.
All right, let's just try and get through some of these because all the exciting stuff is happening on Twitter. Let's just briefly cover James Madison, who looks in this picture like he's stretching out for his Newcastle contract, but of course he's not. Continues to be linked with Newcastle. There isn't a great deal of solid news to report on this one. There have been some contradicting reports that he fancies London over Newcastle. But nobody apparently knows anything for sure. And just today I read that he's been asking for places to live in Newcastle. I don't know how anyone would know that, but that's apparently the latest rumor. As if all the players don't live in exactly the same street in Darras Hall. Like they all live in it, all live next to each other in that one street, don't they? But Craig, Maddison and Tenali in midfield with Bruno up front. Just give us the Premier League trophy now, eh? That's tasty, that, isn't it?
Tell you that this table is going to tip over if you keep talking like that, mate. That sheer pornography you're talking about there. It's that would be one hell of a midfield, that wouldn't it? That would send shivers down the spine of the opposition, and it would just be a dream come true. From where we were just a few years back to potentially having Tenali and Madison with Bruno, Big Joe, 2 Brazilian internationals. Madison is now a fully fledged international. Tenali probably not far off a fully fledged Italian international. It's just a dream come true, isn't it? That midfield it'll be epic. It'll be really cool. And just speaking on there, that photo you've got of Madison there. Do you know he's a big fan of the dots, and that's his pose, his little celebration when he got seen at the Ali Pali. Apparently, that's where they play the World Finals. You can go to the Telly West Arena, whatever it's called these days, and go and watch them there.
All right, there you go, Madders. Get yourself along. Watch some arrows. Get some arrows on you. All right. Let's just move on from all that stuff and just finish off with a little bit of a chat about what's going on with PIF and the Saudi Pro League and Chelsea. We're discussing this because it involves PIF, of course. Saudis have, PIF, let's say, have been buying all of Chelsea's unwanted players. This is so N'Golo Conte has already, of course, signed for Al Ittihad. Oh God, why did I do that to myself? Signed for a team in the Saudi Pro League, and I actually made a note on this about Chelsea that they were in talks about shifting some of the other high earners such as Aubameyang, Hudson-Odoi, Koulibaly, Lukaku, even Mendy and Ziyech. But I got a message on the chat just as we were talking earlier there that Mendy has been completed, Koulibaly has been completed, Ziyech has been completed. Apparently, there's a verbal agreement with Havertz. I thought Arsenal was.
I sure did.
No, that must be related to Arsenal. But yeah, so relating to what we're talking about here, Conte, Mendy, Koulibaly and Ziyech have all been confirmed as signing for various clubs in the Saudi Pro League. Now, there was a bit of a tin foil hat thing going on when all this information started to flood Twitter because Chelsea's owner group, the vehicle that was used to buy Chelsea, Clearly Capital is called, and that's partially with Tom Bowley. They do work for the Saudis, although it also has been reported that PIF own part of Clearly Capital as well. I did some further reading on that, and if they do, it'll be no more than 5%, so minor stakeholder at best. But nonetheless, these purchases, what's that now? 1, 2, 3, 4 purchases confirmed, and possibly another 4 on the table. You must be talking at something like at least 100 million for those 4 players. Going into Chelsea's coffers. Of course, Chelsea, once Tom Bowley took over last year, went on a spending spree. I saw one figure today of 600 million quid they've spent since that takeover last year, which is phenomenal. And of course, that just chucks them in all kinds of FFP trouble when they then start to look to shift some of that deadwood and improve the team this season. I want to try and avoid any kind of tin foil hat on this because it sounds to me more like the PIF and the RSL are trying to just basically do like what China did not so long ago and boost their league, try and get some of the big players in. Obviously, Ronaldo's already out there, I think, isn't he? So they want to try and boost them, bring all these kind of end of contract players, oldish type players, raise the profile of the sport in the country. Probably as part of a grand plan that KSI and PIF have to sports wash. Oh, I said it. Just dodging the tinfoil stuff, though. It's still nonetheless is PIF, our majority owners of Newcastle United, helping a direct rival in Chelsea shift their high earners, those really high earned players that they've got hanging on the books that are really weighing them down, and allows them to then go and boost their own squad, Chelsea that is, ahead of the forthcoming season. Like that's not helping us at all in any way that I can think of right now, unless they then start buying Ryan Fraser's for 30 million, and any of the other kind of fringe players. I was going to say Matty Longstaff, but he's already gone, hasn't he? What do you make of this? And do you think that? All right, let's touch on tinfoil a little bit. Do you think if this was Newcastle and PIF buying players to play in the RSL, would there be one monumental outrage through all of the press about this kind of inflated values for players that aren't worth that much, and it's because they own Newcastle, etc., etc.? Or is that just purely tinfoil hat? But in any event, it's not helping us, is it? It's helping Chelsea.
It's not, but you're absolutely right. If it was Newcastle players that were being sold over there, you just got to look at the outrage over the new front of shirt sponsor, Sealer. People went mental because it's a PIF-owned company. And we got 25 million, whatever. If we were to get 30 million from a Saudi-based club for Ryan Fraser, everyone would go like, hold on, something's a bit fishy here. And you'd be right, because Ryan Fraser is not worth 30 pence, let alone 30 million. But it is a bit strange how they are doing this. But I do also think as well that in terms of PIF's investments, we are a very small fish in their very big pond. And they might not even realize what they're doing. Maybe the governor needs to step in. That I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but the bloke who was there at the end of the season with a Toon line in his jacket, the chairman.
Beard.
Him. I think you're not going to try and pronounce it either, because I haven't got a clue.
Not a chance.
But maybe he's got to step in and say, look, hold on, this is what you're doing. You're directly affecting our own investment here. But maybe they see the Saudi Pro League or whatever it's called as an even bigger investment, which it probably is, because it just helps with their long-term future of what they want to do for Saudi Arabia. But again, we are just a very small fish in their massive pond.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep an eye on what they do there, because I do feel like Chelsea are probably going to. And then don't forget, Arsenal are buying Havertz for 60 million or something. 65 million was the figure, I think, which is big money, really. I think he's a good player, but that seems like a lot of money for one of your rivals. Let's keep an eye on that, and we'll have to keep. Yeah, go on.
A little bit of breaking news here on Twitter. The fee apparently is 60 million euros, and I've just converted that. That is 51.56 million pounds. That is for Benali. So around 52 million pounds.
Which tallies with the figure that tallies with the figure that was first announced or mentioned in various rumors yesterday. The initial figure that I assumed had been rejected, but perhaps that figure was what AC Milan wanted rather than what we'd actually bid. Very interesting. Mm-hmm. All right, look, Craigie, we've got a lot of Twitter to watch for the rest of the day. That was just an update on the news as we see it. We will be back next week with another one of these things, hopefully with a transfer to report. Although if that transfer does happen, we might well be back on here sooner rather than later, Craigie, doing a transfer special episode as well on our mate Tonali. But until that happens, if that happens, that will do for us for now. Hope to see you on the next one. Cheers, Craigie, and see you all soon.
Cheers, bye.